Let's do it again. A very good morning. Happy Tuesday. My name is Kevin Burns, the mayor of Geneva, Illinois. And I also have the honor of serving as the executive board chairman of the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. And most importantly and most enjoyable as chairperson of the MMC's Environment and Energy Committee. As I just stated, we're here today to discuss recycling in our communities, what we can do to enhance, elevate, inspire, and motivate people to recycle more. As all of you know, because you're good recyclers, last Friday, November 15th, was America Recycles Day. And it's the only national recognized day that's all about recycling. As I said, it's a day to educate, motivate, and make recycling bigger and better in all of our communities. Believe it or not, it started out in Texas as Recycles Day in 1994. And America's Recycles Day is now led by our friends at Keep America Beautiful. We gathered last Wednesday, I believe it was the 13th of November, in advance of America Recycles Day to announce our Chicago Metro Recycling Education and Outreach, or REO, campaign to make recycling bigger and better throughout the Chicago region. We all are grateful for the grant support from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which will help us launch a more comprehensive and collaborative approach to increasing recycling. And that grant total is $2 million. The diversion rates in our region are stalled at about 30 to 35%, which is not sufficient to meet the EPA's national recycling goal of 50% by 2030, or the Metro County's individual diversion goals. We are joining as a region to partner and tackle our lackluster recycling rates through the Chicago Metro Recycling Education and Outreach Campaign. The counties of DuPage, Kane, McHenry, and Will, the Solid Waste Agency of Lake County, or SWALCO, and the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County, SWANC, are also partnering. Several of those partners are here today to present exciting information, including my friend Claire Ryan, who will be up first to discuss the limitations of curbside recycling, what can be done and can't be done with regard to recycling products through curbside programs. Claire Ryan is the recycling program coordinator for beautiful Kane County, which is headquartered in Geneva, and president of the Illinois Recycling Foundation. Claire previously worked as the program director for the Midwest Invasive Plant Network, a regional nonprofit organization affiliated with the Morton Arboretum. Here's a fun fact for you folks. Claire calls North Aurora home with her husband, son, and cats, and that word is plural, and she enjoys gardening and, according to my notes, rock and roll. What era of rock and roll do you enjoy, Claire?
Early thousands is my jam,
Early
which
thousands,
is
oh my
probably not
God.
the common answer. So,
I was hoping you'd say the 50s and 60s, but thank you anyway. So Claire, we're going to kick off with a question, then we're going to turn this over to you. I believe there is a question already asked or being asked soon, so otherwise the floor is yours.
sounds good. I'll go
Yeah,
ahead and get my screen share going while I think Tori was going to pop a interactive question for you in the chat. All right, let's do it. Oh, okay. All right. So thank you again, Mayor Burns, for that introduction. And thank you, Edith, for inviting us here to talk about recycling today. Lucky me is one of my favorite things to do is just to talk about recycling. This is a slight modification of a presentation I actually give the public when they give me enough time to get through it. It's a little bit of recycling 101, but it is more focused like on the industry, what the industry looks like, how the recycling system works, than it is necessarily about the what's in and what's out. Though we will touch a little bit on that, and hopefully I'll be able to peep in the chat when we get to that and answer maybe some of the questions that come in about items that are confusing to recycle for your residents. All right, just a quick overview of what I'll touch on. We'll start with a definition. Always good to make sure we're talking about the same thing. So, from my view, what recycling is and what it can accomplish and what it is not. We'll take a look at the landscape of waste infrastructure and follow a little bit the journey or that recycling and waste goes on until its final place of disposition, or in the case of recycling and compost, until it reaches market to be resold. We'll look at curbside recycling trends. This does, lean heavily on Kane County data because obviously that's what I have access to. But we'll take a look beyond that as well and talk about what is potentially driving some of those trends. Curbside limitations, recycling limitations, and the guidelines that we've come up with and share related to those limitations. And then we'll talk a little bit about markets as well. So, what's recycling? It's a process through which materials that would otherwise be disposed, most likely in a landfill in Illinois, are collected, separated, processed, and then returned to the economy. It's an important piece of a waste reduction strategy, but recycling in itself is not and should not be the whole strategy. The word cloud on the right there was developed by my predecessor, Jennifer Jarland, and put on the cover of Kane County's most recent solid waste management plan. And it really caught my eye when the position was posted. I think I actually mentioned this word cloud in my interview. I really liked how it focuses on all those other parts that need to be kind of combined with recycling to come up with a whole picture of a real strategy. So compost, reusing, repairing, rethinking our purchases and our true needs and wants, education, communication, all these things are a part of a comprehensive strategy. Nevertheless, it's important to point out that over the last 5 years, private waste management companies in the Chicago region, especially the major players in our market, each of them have invested millions and millions of dollars in new state-of-the-art facilities to sort and process recyclables. So, some people think recycling is an overstated part of the puzzle. I don't think so. I think it's a very important part of the puzzle, and we'll talk about that. So what recycling isn't? It's not a cure-all to our solid waste problems, and it's not going to magically fix our single-use society. Our society is ever increasingly driven by convenience and this kind of one-directional pipeline, right? You want to get the thing, use the thing, and get rid of it as fast and conveniently as possible. And recycling can't fix that. It's going to take a lot more kind of robust of a strategy. Some of the inherent problems with recycling that kind of prevent it from being a more perfect solution is that it relies on every single person taking the right behavior. And it's by and large voluntary behavior, right? It's no one sees what you do with your trash in your house for the very most part, unless you've got exceedingly nosy neighbors. And yeah, so it relies on people having knowledge and people caring and doing the right thing. There are facility limitations that we'll talk about more in depth in a little bit. And then there are market limitations and fluctuations as well. Remember, part of the definition is that the material has to be returned to the economy. So if no one's interested in buying it and using it, you can't recycle it. Recycling is also not transparent or easy to understand for the general public. There's been this misleading use of the chasing arrows symbol with it. Well, I'm classifying it as misleading. I think most members of the general public would also classify it as misleading, where these triangles, the chasing arrows with a number in it, is stamped on literally every plastic thing sold on the market, whether or not that item is recycled in practice in any curbside programs or not. That's a real problem. And another issue is that there's sort of a curtain drawn across recycling operations because these, especially in this region, are almost completely private sector operations. And the public sector that contracts with these companies for service hasn't always been great about requiring them to report what they're taking in, how much, and what they're doing with it. So that's definitely something we can all find room to improve as well. And just to reiterate, in my word cloud, if we're serious about reducing waste, we need to think about reducing, repairing, reusing, and recycling sort of as a last resort, not as the first and only thing that we're gonna do. So I think in my title slide, I called this kind of the landscape of waste management infrastructure. When I'm talking to the general public, I'm more likely to say, where's our stuff going? What's the journey that material goes on? So slight caveat too is that the locations on this map are locations that were reported as being used by haulers that service Kane County with Kane County's material. So I think with the transfers, especially that's these orange dots, these are transfer stations, I'm probably missing a lot. But I have the Kane County ones for sure. So when your material is picked up at the curbside or from a dumpster, it's first going to go to a transfer station, which, as the name implies, that's where they're going to move the material from those collection vehicles, which are not terribly efficient, into more standard overroad 18-wheelers to go on the next step of its journey. Throughout this process, recyclables, single stream recyclables, and garbage are kept separate. Depending on the facility, they might be in completely separate buildings or separate bays, or they might be on opposite ends of the same large building. And the same goes for yard waste too. If the facility accepts yard waste, that's going to be separated as well. And every single transfer I've ever seen, they take that very, very seriously. There's no intermingling of the material. And then it gets, like I said, to a transfer trailer. I saw one on my commute this morning that was liberally splattered in garbage juice. It was a beautiful sight. No. And then your waste, your trash, is going to go to a landfill. And I've got landfills in this maroon color on the map. You would see that there's only 2 active landfills in the Metropolitan Mayor Caucus region. I think this is the Zion landfill up here, almost full. And then Prairie View down in Will County. DeKalb landfill is just outside of the metro region. And then we start getting significantly further away into Rockford, Lee County. So the IEPA estimates that landfill capacity in the entire state can meet our disposal needs at the rate they're occurring currently for about 19 years. The Chicago region, because of only having like 2 active landfills, right, we have the least capacity while generating the most amount of stuff. So kind of the short lesson here is that to the extent it's not already happening, long distance transport of waste to landfill it is coming, and that comes at cost, certainly fuel costs, but also we need to think of the greenhouse gas emissions associated with that overroad transport as well. There is really no appetite, at least in Kane County, to build new landfills. Oops. All right. On the flip side of the coin, so from the transfer, our recycling is taken to what's called a material recovery facility, a MRF. And those are symbolized by these blue recycling signs. And you'll see they're really clustered in the Chicago area. So the Chicago Metro has the most recycling sorting capacity in the entire state. And then the green dots on the map, these are composting facilities. They're primarily, especially in our neck of the woods, focused on accepting and composting yard waste. They are allowed to take other organic material up to about 10%. Then there are a handful as well of fully permitted sites that can kind of take a more liberal mix of organic material to be composted. So that's our map. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the mix of waste that we've seen coming out of Kane County. And so this is a basic time series I did. This is the data here is reported to us by the haulers for each municipality, and then I basically take a total for the entire county. This would be weights coming into the transfer station, and it hasn't really been manipulated in any other way. Some other counties, I know do things a little differently. They might take out a percentage of recycling because they're assuming that there's going to be material that goes to the transfer station that isn't actually recyclable, and that definitely is a very valid data transformation, but I haven't done it here, just FYI. And what we've seen over the years that we have solid waste data for, started in 2012, is a pretty steady increase in per capita weight. So this is weight of material per household disposed in a year. And this relationship on this kind of linear regression is, it's not perfect for sure, but it is fairly strong for data involving human behavior. And it's showing us that year over year, each household in our county is producing roughly 33 more pounds of garbage than they did the year before. Interesting, you can see COVID here, right? There was a huge bump because people are at home all the time. So producing presumably more garbage over those 2 years, and that affected the trend line for sure. On the recycling side, I'm sad to say we're seeing the opposite. Year over year, households are producing approximately 16 pounds less recyclables. And again, this relationship is pretty darn strong. We'll talk about why that might be happening a little bit on the next slide. Yard waste, really no relationship whatsoever. It's weird on my graph. It looks almost like a sine curve. I know Marta has taken Will County's yard waste data and tried to find correlations with like rainfall, where you might have a lot more plant growth and drought and storms and that kind of thing, and really just not been able to figure it out. So it really just seems kind of random. All this boils down that our pre-pandemic recycling rates, so material coming from inside the house, was about 30% of total material. And then diversion total, so that includes yard waste and other organics going to compost, was 37%. Post-pandemic, unfortunately, it has come down. We've been seeing recycling rates at around 26%, and then a total diversion of about 33%. Just as a reminder, the national goal and the goal in Kane County's solid waste management plan is diversion of about 50%. So we've got a long way to go, and unfortunately, we're going in the wrong direction. A couple of caveats, just this little asterisk in the title there, that's the grain of salt you should, to some extent, be taking this with. Our data isn't that great. We have issues with completeness. I know in our last solid waste management plan, we basically said, the data does not line up with what state level studies say it should. So we kind of defer to state level studies when we have them. There's also issues with weight-based metrics, so we'll talk about a little bit more on the next slide. So what contributes to a trend in recycling habits? And what we see in this data? Well, I mean, one thing that contributes is an ever-changing mix of materials that people are experiencing in their households. Just one major retailer, like say your Amazons or Walmarts of the world, makes a major change in packaging. For example, switching out a bubble mailer for one of the paper ones that has the, dissolvable material inside, or if they change out boxes for bubble mailers, just one company, that will be reflected in recycling data because those companies are so dominant in the marketplace. A consistent trend we've seen over the years is lightweighting of packaging, which means packaging manufacturers are trying to make the same item with less material over time. So, say a Dasani water bottle today might weigh two-thirds or a half of what one weighed 10 years, 15 years ago. And that shows up in your data as well. You need more material to make the same weight. There's certainly been changes in international policy regarding import and export of recyclables. We'll talk about that towards the end of the presentation here. There are some extreme market fluctuations during and post-pandemic. Corrugated cardboard would probably be the most clear example of that. There was a huge surge in demand when everyone was locked at home and ordering online. We saw kind of a boom and bust demand for old corrugated cardboard to be recycled. And I say boom and bust, I mean in the market price for that material. There's been a long-standing lack of access to recycling programs for multifamily residences. That's not a trend per se. I think that's been a consistent problem across the last 10, 15 years. But you might have changes in the percentage of your population that's living in multifamily residences compared to single family, depending on what the economy is doing and how your area is developing. All of those are mostly outside of our control as recycling coordinators to address, at least as individuals and in an active and proactive way. However, the last three, I think, are what we're looking to get at with the REO campaign. Public confusion over what is and isn't curbside recyclable. I'm sure that's reflected in some of your chat answers that hope to take a peek at in a minute. Public skepticism. Some people just don't believe that recycling is real at all. There's, there's been a lot of negative press about recycling too, and people take it to heart and they just say, it's an inconvenience to me and it's not making a difference anyway, so to heck with it. I'm not bothering anymore. Or apathy, just really, people are busy, got a lot of stuff going on. It doesn't even cross their radar. According to the Recycling Partnership, the Illinois participation rate in recycling programs among households that have access, so that's not counting people that don't have recycling service, is 65%. Now that's better than the national average, which is 59%, again, among households that have access. I just want to point out, this is probably going back to an earlier bullet, but this graph on the right here takes out that light weighting a little bit because it's comparing the percentage of bottles or weight of plastic in bottles recovered to the weight that was produced. So this is kind of where you see, instead of like a decreasing trend, you see that stagnation. We kind of peaked and this is national data, by the way, too. For PET bottle recovery, it sort of tapered off around 2011 and has been more or less kind of steady in the 32 to 28%, a dip during COVID, but then back up again over the years here. So again, we kind of need to do better than this to make an impact and to reach the goals we've set for ourselves locally and nationally. So we'll talk a little bit about MRFs. So a MRF is where your single stream recycling goes to be processed and sorted using a combination of human labor, machinery, and artificial intelligence to sort into component materials that can be marketed and also to weed out contaminants that do not have recycling value. Oh. So what should and should not go into curbside recycling really comes down to three things. Is materials that are safe to collect, transport, and sort at one of these facilities. Lithium-ion batteries are a great example of a material that is highly recyclable and should always be recycled, but that are not safe to collect, transport, or sort at a MRF. They have to be materials that can be sorted with existing labor and technological resources. I would say teeny tiny items like really little plastic prescription bottles, shreds of paper, scraps of paper. Those are recyclable in theory, but they can't be sorted out by hand practically, and they are so small they fall through the equipment at any modern MRF. So that's an example there of a limit. And then finally, materials, they have to be able to be sold on the commodities market. So film plastics, plastic bags, the bubble mailers, they are, they cause problems with the machine. So they kind of violate machinery. They violate Rule 2, but they also violate Rule 3 in major ways that it's just not, even if they were easy to recover, there is not a strong market for kind of mixed film plastics coming from MRFs at the end of the day. So what my colleagues did, and this was actually before I started in this position, they formed a group called the Recycling Contamination Task Force and developed these guidelines that really help people understand the yes and no of what should be put into the recycling cart. With metals, it's pretty straightforward. It's your food and drink receptacles. They should be clean and empty. We're having a vigorous debate right now about how clean is clean. I won't get into that now, but just not gops of food on it would be ideal. Paper is really any mixed paper coming from the household. It's corrugated cardboard, it's chipboard, it's catalogs, it's mailers, it's junk mail, it's egg cartons. It can be glossy, it can be not glossy. It just shouldn't be coated in plastic, more or less. Obviously coated in plastic, though we have had some advancements in that realm. We're able to recycle cartons, which do have a lining of plastic and aluminum, both types, the aseptic shelf-stable cartons and the refrigerator cartons, and the paper cup was the newest addition there. So most paper now from the household we can take in recycling. Glass, again, this really should be your food and beverage containers. And then plastic, I'm going to get it tattooed, bottles, tubs, jugs, jars, and then they're going to change it. But that's the long and short. We tell people, again, household product containers, maybe your bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars. The no's, so this is up to date. The yeses is really up to date. The no's is too. We might, I think if we were redesigning it today, stress slightly different things. The plastic bag certainly is still kind of an enemy to the MRF. I think we'd want to add in bubble mailers and other packaging flexible films, just flexible pouches that have really taken off in the last few years. Large items are going to cause a problem. Anything larger than the largest laundry detergent container is too big. Tanglers, clothing, the yucks, food, liquid, diapers, batteries, needles. I think probably if we were redoing this today, we'd stress batteries more on electronics because they're really risky in the recycling stream and can cause fires and just hazards to workers and machinery alike. Shredded paper, still, that little stuff is a problem. Let's see if I can figure out how to jump in the chat and see what some of the events that got put in. Plastics and polystyrene. Yeah, polystyrene is one of the plastics that is usually clamshells. Forks and knives are made of polystyrene, and styrofoam certainly unfortunately not a material that is wanted in curbside recycling. I'm not really seeing any others. Styrofoam, plastic bags are the persistent pests. Yes, they most certainly are. Unnumbered plastics. We tell people not to pay too much attention to the numbers. To do your bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars, and if it's not one of those, it's probably better in the garbage. All right. Kind of buzzed through that, but the campaign we designed from this project is really intended to address a lot of this, and help people to understand in the most simple terms that we can. I did want to show just a real quick view of a MRF in action. The first video I'm going to show, I think it might start as soon as I cue it up here, is an optical sorter. What it does, it uses infrared spectrometry to identify material. It's usually targeting one specific type of material, so one type of plastic or possibly paper. And then it uses bursts of compressed air to knock items of the target material off the conveyor belt. So what you're going to see as the belt runs is material flying in the air. That's the target material. And then it's a little harder to see, but non-targeted items just fall straight off the bottom of the conveyor belt. And they go basically on two different journeys to the next step of sorting in the MRF. So cue this guy up. But I think this was trying to target bottles. The next one is an example of machinery using artificial intelligence. This one's real hard to see. The material goes along on a conveyor belt, and then there is a robotic arm that comes down, but it's kind of shielded, unfortunately. And it's picking up, again, one or two target materials. Often these are used for aluminum because it's a very valuable material in the MRF. And often they're used for the cartons as well. You want to look to the far right, and hopefully you'll see a little suction cup arm doing its thing. It's kind of like a little chicken, like. All right. That's just a conveyor belt. Then I kind of pan over. There it is under doing its thing. So this is equipment that's, I think, pretty standard now in a modern facility. Certainly one built today would have one, possibly both of these. Human beings still very important to the process. They're often deployed in quality control, so doing the last check to make sure that there aren't plastic bags and other just kind of contaminants or gross things, batteries certainly lurking in the stream before this material goes to be baled. And then the end result is bales. Big, beautiful bales. In this picture, we've got aluminum, corrugated cardboard behind. I think to the left, this is natural HDPE or plastic number 2. This could be your milk jugs, and some laundry detergent as well. All right, finishing up now. So I think I'm at my time, if not over, par for the course. I did just want to talk a little bit about markets and some of the skepticism around recycling. I think stems from kind of an awakening that we had in this country around 2017, 2018, when China kind of abruptly announced that they would no longer be importing any scrap plastic material or really any recyclable material that did not meet extremely, extremely high contamination standards. And this was kind of a de facto ban because those standards were more or less impossible to meet. I think even your most high-tech MRF is not able to meet the standards they put in place. So no more exporting material to China. And a lot of people just didn't know we were ever exporting waste. And I think the other kind of presumption was, well, we can't send it to China anymore, so we're just going to send it to some other poor country, to Malaysia, to Indonesia, to wherever, and they're going to do what they want with it, whether it's, burning or just leave it around, dump it in the ocean. And that's really not actually what the data shows. And I think that's important to point out. So this graph is showing gross exports of plastic waste from the United States. The orange bar here is China. Here's the National Sword Policy. You see a huge decrease, in the amount of exports to China. The black bars are to other non-Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development countries. So that's kind of your more developing nations. That would be countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam. And then your blue are OECD countries. That's more our trade partners, developed countries, etc. And what you see certainly in that first year is there's an expansion in sending material to other non-OECD countries, but then a pretty quick retraction after that. And overall, the amount of waste being exported, plastic waste, has decreased pretty precipitously. Um, Today, our biggest importer of plastic material is Canada, and the second biggest is Mexico. These are countries that have the infrastructure to sort and to actually manufacture with recycled plastics. I'm not gonna claim there is no shipping of waste to countries that can't properly deal with it, and that none of our recyclables ever end up, in the ocean or being burned or any of the rest of it. But it's not the major way of disposing of things. And this graph tells us that one of two things has happened. Either we're using way less plastic than we did, 5 years ago, which I promise you is not the case, or we figured out ways to process and use this material domestically. And that's really what's happened. I think that's part of the story we need to tell with this campaign is to really show people where their material is going, how it's being used, how they can buy it again and again and again and keep it in a circular economy. So that's what I have. Sorry, I'm sure I went over time a little bit. If there's time for questions, I'll take them. If there's not, I will pass it back to Mayor Burns to introduce the next speaker.
Thank you, Claire, very much. In the spirit of recycling, we're going to take the last 10 minutes of your presentation and use it again next month.
Okay, that works for me.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next, let's take a look at policy solutions surrounding the ever popular desire to increase the recycling rate. First, Walter Willis, my good friend and a champion of waste management policy, will talk about state legislative solutions. Then he will share strategies for the municipalities to improve recycling through their hauling contracts. As most of you know, Walter has been the executive director of the Solid Waste Agency of Lake County since 2007. He serves on the board of Illinois chapter of the Solid Waste Association of North America and is an honorary board member of the Product Stewardship Institute. Walter, the floor is yours.
Okay, and it looks like you're muted.
You're right. Thank you, Cheryl. Good morning. Thank you, Mayor Burns. Pleasure to be here. And I have to give Christina Siebert credit. This is her slideshow, basically. But I'm going to talk about extended producer responsibility, kind of where we're at in Illinois, and also give you a few tips on hauling contracts. So extended producer responsibility is basically it's a law that extends into the producer and has that producer have some skin in the game, if you will, on the end use of their product or their packaging, so that we can truly work towards the circular economy and have the producer have some pressure to design for the environment and design for reuse and design for recyclability. So this is extended producer responsibility actually refers to legislation. A more general topic is called product stewardship. So why do we look at EPR and why have we been focusing on it in Springfield so much? Clearly, a lot of these materials that we're able to recycle now, the only reason we're able to is because of extended producer responsibility, at least in a bigger way. Like electronics, when we first started, there was some value to the materials we were collecting, but ultimately we needed some funding from the producers of those products to actually stand up our programs. It shifts the burden, the management burden from the government to the product and the producers themselves. Like I said, hopefully it's going to incentivize waste reduction, reuse, and recycling, and more sustainable products. Obviously, one of the things we put in almost all the EPR laws is a convenience standard. Really, when you look at recycling and sustainability programs, it's really good, convenient access plus good education typically equals a successful program. And also this idea of free riding, typically with an EPR law, if you are not part of the EPR program, you cannot sell your product into the state. So that's the ultimate hammer in this legislation. Next couple slides just show the plethora of different laws and products that we passed throughout the country, and Illinois is kind of working its way up as far as the number of products that we have under EPR. And this is just a bar graph showing the countrywide the number of laws. Won't go through all these, but typically when we're crafting a piece of legislation, we did this specifically with the packaging bill we introduced in 2023. These are the 16 main components of a bill. So it's quite the exercise to put together a well thought out and integrated EPR law. And Product Stewardship Institute, obviously they're recognized on these slides, has been one of the founders and leaders in helping units of government produce effective EPR laws. And these are the kind of the 16 main pillars of a piece of legislation. So what have we done here in Illinois? Electronics, actually we're up for renewal of that piece of legislation after December of 26. There's a sunset in the law, and Marta and Christina are taking the lead on working on that extension of that. We hope to get that done in 2025. We feel pretty good about that. Program that's so successful would be very hard to see go away, especially with the support and understanding that the General Assembly now has of extended producer responsibility legislation. There's a good smattering of them that would know what that acronym stands for, and that's progress for us. Thermostats have been around that piece of legislation since 2010, but we're on a roll here. You can see the last 3 years with pharmaceuticals, the drug take-back law, which is now in implementation. The paint law will hopefully kick in later 2025. And then the battery legislation we passed for the first time in just one session. And again, that was Christina taking the lead on that. We did have the battery industry support, which is always helpful when you have an industry that wants to be supportive of these types of laws. And that law will kick in 2026. But a lot of you, any municipality with over 10,000 people, the IEPA is looking for you. They have a DOE grant that is going to basically help them support collection programs for single-use and rechargeable batteries. So your alkalins will finally find a home, both under the DOE grant program with IEPA and the battery law that we passed in 2024. This is the big one. EPR for packaging and paper products. We estimated that it's about to stand up a truly robust recycling program throughout the state of Illinois would cost on the order of $500 million. So that's shifting of the recycling costs from the ratepayer to the producer. So when you buy that product, that's in theory, it's cost internalized in the product. And so this is a huge game changer as far as recycling and getting access to everybody throughout the state and seeing that cost be put where it should be, which is in the product itself. So we've got 5 states and since 2021. If you would have told me 10 years ago that we'd have 5 EPR laws for packaging in the United States, I would have told you you're crazy. That there was just so much opposition, even though these same multinational companies are doing it in Canada and Europe and other parts of the world. But when it came to the United States, they tried to hold a hard line, and luckily we've been able to move ahead, and now we're starting to see producers come around a little bit more. And we worked very hard to develop a bill, and we introduced it in 2023. Why are we so focused on this? And obviously local government, the people on this call, and I know some of my members are on this call, they know we've been beating this drum for several years now. But to be honest, if we're ever going to get our recycling programs to get off the stagnant or the downward line, like Clara was showing, we have to have the producers helping us. They have to bring packaging that we can recycle, that we don't get confused by. And they need to have some cost in the game so that when they bring this into their bottom line, we're going to start to see some true advancements in the packaging that's being used for our products. To get to that confusion point about what's recyclable or not. And obviously, as we pointed out, I think the Recycling Partnership is estimating that over 30% of the households in the state of Illinois have no access to any type of recycling, either curbside or drop off. So what's the solution? We believe it is to pass this legislation ultimately and to shift that recycling cost from local government to the producer, so that they have the incentive to bring more recoverable, reusable, sustainable packaging. And a big component of these EPR laws is goals either in the law or in the plan that has to be developed, that we cut down on the amount of packaging we're putting in the marketplace. Some are creating a baseline of a certain year, say 2025. And in 5 years, you have to reduce the amount of packaging put into the market by 10%, for example. So there's definitely a push towards getting rid of unneeded packaging. And also, if you use eco-modulated fees, which basically is the way that the producers would pay to cover that $500 million cost, if that's accurate, it's based upon the type of packaging that they're putting into the marketplace. The easier it is to recycle, the more value it has, the lower fee that they would pay into the system. So there is that incentive. And the law we did draft would have covered all the single-family, multifamily, K through 12 public spaces and local governments. Would not have gone into the commercial sector, just the residential and then these other institutional uses. So what's going on with the packaging here in Illinois? We tried very hard to get our law through, but we ran into some significant roadblocks that are kind of unique to Illinois' situation in a certain regard. And so we decided that we needed to do the recycling needs assessment anyway, which is to kind of do the baseline analysis of how much packaging are the producers putting into the marketplace, how much are we recycling of that, where do we have gaps in Illinois where there are no programs. And then this document will also do scenarios, I think, of 35, 50, and 65% recycling scenarios. I might have that slightly off. We're in Christina Seabird is actually the chair of that advisory committee that is mentioned on the next bullet. And so we've got a very diverse stakeholder group. It's got the producers on it. It's got the waste industry on it. It's got the environmental community. It's got the actual producers themselves, not just the organizations that represent them. So a wide, good group of people. They've had several meetings. And right now we're waiting for the IEPA to get this consultant hired so that the needs assessment study can commence. And right now the advisory committee is kind of informing itself about what other states have done and, helping with getting the RFP out for the needs assessment. So there is a report due to the General Assembly in 2026. This will be a very important document because it hopefully will have some consensus in it from the advisory committee about the next steps for Illinois. So as far as SWALCO is concerned, we're looking at 2027 as the year to push the packaging EPR in Illinois. That's pretty much how we've teed it up here with the needs assessment bill and law. Now, there are some entities we're hearing through the grapevine that the advocates and the proponents of the bottle bill or the deposit return system bill are going to marry it up with a packaging EPR bill in the belief that trying to pass a bottle bill alone is very difficult, hasn't been done in a couple of decades, that they need to marry it up to a packaging EPR bill. Obviously, people are free to submit bills anytime they want in the General Assembly if they can find a sponsor. We simply think it's more prudent to let the needs assessment be completed, and then we can have that serious discussion. But we've got some time in the interim, and it's very important. I know we spoke to this group when we were developing the packaging bill, and I can tell you, without local government's strong support, we're going to have a hard time getting this piece of legislation passed. So looking to the future, right now, our agency does own and operate an HHW facility, and we've been in contact with many people on this call who either own and operate one or help fund one. And so we're looking to hopefully pass the second EPR law for household hazardous waste in the United States. Vermont has passed their legislation. It is drafted. It is out there getting circulated with the various stakeholders. Hasn't been formally filed, but we do have chief sponsors, Senator Kaler in the Senate and Representative Chung in the House. And so we're moving ahead on this very important piece of legislation. And then the Illinois Product Stewardship Council, and Marta's our chair. We're always thinking about the next products and what to do next. We do believe that we're on a very significant time frame here with our ability to get these types of laws passed in Springfield. Hopefully with the producers going at least neutral on us and not fighting. We do expect the HHW bill to be a bit of a battle. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to shift now to tips for hauling contracts. I've got 43 municipal members that typically go to bid, and actually Lake County itself holds a franchise with about 20,000 homes in the unincorporated areas. So do a lot of hauling contracts. Data. As part of the REO grant, we're going to need to collect data. And to Claire's point, the best source of data we have is the haulers that are collecting material. We do know that it's times that they're making best guesses when they're commingling material in a truck from one town to another. But for the most part, they are the best source of data for us. So it's important to get that in your hauling contract, that they have to report it typically on a quarterly basis. We've also put in some of our contracts the prospect of possibly having to do a cart tagging program, and that would be something that we kind of fleshed out a little bit in the contract as far as what would trigger it and who would be responsible for the costs associated. We've done a couple of cart tagging programs in Lake County, and they do definitely get the message across to the generator. Now, whether it sticks or not is a different question. Education components. I got Recycle Coach in there, Jeff, for you. We definitely are moving towards Recycle Coach as our main platform for people that understand their own collection programs, but also what goes where. Instead of having to, navigate throughout our website and try to find that page, this Recycle Coach platform is going to bring everything much easier to the generator to understand the do's and don'ts, when their collection day is, when their yard waste season starts, et cetera. So it's going to be a very powerful tool. And we do want the haulers to be engaged with it as well, so that we can drive everybody to the same platform and speak with the same words as far as, what we want recycled and what can't be. Several of my municipalities require the hauler to do surveys about customer service, what people are confused about, what they'd like to see. So that's always something that's interesting and kind of keeps the hauler on their toes. Food scrap. the ride-along program is where you basically see if the hauler can offer your yard waste program, hopefully without an increase if they're going to a compost site that already takes food waste, and that way you can get your people a little bit, tipping their toe in the water there a little bit about starting food scrapping. The idea being once you get this ride-along program for 8 months, that your towns will start looking for year-round programs. And right now we have 5 year-round programs in Lake County, and it all started with the ride-along. So I do believe it works. And at the very least, ask for the quote to see if there is a difference to do the ride-along program for the 8 months. And might as well see what the quote is or the cost is to go year-round with the third cart, especially if you have residents that are buying a lot of stickers anyway. Giving them that cart might end up being a cost savings for them. That's what Highwood found out when they went through this. Electronics, we opt in our haulers and have them there. They collect a significant amount of electronics in Lake County. That's because we've been putting it in the contracts that they either have to provide a roll-off or at the curb service. And then we allow them to bring that material through the EPR program for electronics. Customer service is a big deal. I'm hearing more and more complaints from basically all the towns from all the haulers about customer service. And I do hope that Recycle Coach will help with that by allowing people to send an email about complaints and get that work orders, set up quicker with the hauler so that these things get rectified. And it's typically in our contracts, it could become a grounds for terminating the contract. More time, when one of my members says, hey, our contract's up in 3 months, I just go, all right, well, that's going to be interesting. We might have to ask your current hauler for an extension because you want to leave enough time, one, to figure out if you want to go out to bid. And if you do, leave plenty of time for the transition and for the hauler, especially if you're in a large municipality, buying trucks, and that is still a bit of a time lag for the hauler. So build in plenty of time and get ready for a little bit of sticker shock these days. We have fewer and fewer haulers that are bidding. When I first started many moons ago here in 2007, I'd have 6 or 7 haulers submitting bids. Now I'm down to 3, and one of them really doesn't count. And I won't even say that company's name because you probably already know. Another thing is, they're going to ask you if you're flexible on your collection date. And the reason they ask you that is a lot of times they'll have some trucks that may not be as busy based upon, when their collection days are and some of the other communities they have. So if they can optimize that truck on a certain day and give you a better rate because of it, I think you should be open to that concept. And then a franchise fee is allowed under statute. And typically, we're in the $5,000 to $15,000 a year franchise fee range. We're not looking at huge franchise fees, but enough that you could do a card tagging program or you could help with the education and things like that. So that's what I've got, and I will turn it over to, I think, Marta.
Yes, and I have the pleasure of introducing Marta. Ladies and gentlemen, Marta Keene is the recycling program specialist for Will County, where she has worked since she got you beat for a year, Walter, 2006. She also serves as the chair of the Illinois Product Stewardship Council, where she examines ways government and industry can work together to achieve waste reduction and provide recycling in a cost-effective manner. Marta, the floor is all yours. Good to see you.
Okay, and it looks like you're muted right now, Marta.
There we go. Found it. It changed my screen, so my apologies. And thank you, Mayor, for the lovely introduction. So yes, I have the pleasure of talking to you about a very fun topic today, and that's games. and how you can use them to engage the audience. So you've heard Claire talk about people being a little bit disengaged and recycling rates falling. And certainly this idea that we want to get them to understand that recycling works and how to do it properly, and the confusion that we have out there. So one of those great ways to do that is through some games. And in Will County, we've employed an environmental educator since 1998 to go out specifically to our schools and engage with students and teachers directly and faculty and help them learn a little bit about recycling. And we have an Earth Flag program that they can earn from engaging in that activity. So as part of this Rio grant from the federal government, we intend to have some games that will be involved. Let's see if I get this to move. That is, so next, there we go. Yes. So there's a science behind the idea of using games. It's not just a frivolous thing that you're engaged in. Addressing the issue of recycling contamination needs a multifaceted approach, and gamification can play a vital role in the endeavor by leveraging the important part of a person participating in the game to improve that process and enhance their understanding of what's contamination and what's recycling. Utilizing strategies such as reward points, campaigns, rewards, and immersive storytelling will transform what we all kind of think of as a mundane activity into a dynamic experience, and it can be fun and engaging. So when we talk about going out to the public and engaging in a game, that can be at a tabling event. And then, of course, we also developed in 2010 on Will County Green computer games on the website. And if any of you are thinking that that's so juvenile and how would it possibly work, I would challenge you to see if your young person still loves Minecraft in their college years and beyond. So there are games out there that people find useful well beyond. So here's one example of one of our tabling events. And I will tell you that you want to attend events that are already going to be teaming with participants. So as opposed to having a green fair, which you're going to be preaching to the choir, we really encourage you to go out to things like a Touch a Truck or a baseball game, kids festivals, STEM fairs. All of these are great places to engage children and the caregivers who brought them there in your games. Okay, you want to provide some kind of a low-cost, sustainable prize for the person. Let the parents assist them. That engages them. Make it appealing for both younger children as well as the teenagers. And then also make it easy for bystanders to kind of be able to watch someone playing the game and still learn what you're trying to teach in the game. So I know that might seem challenging, but it's absolutely doable. And then the computer-based games. You want to design games that are colorful and they're engaging. They have recognizable objects in them. Be sure to include music. Build in multiple levels to challenge people and improve their desire to re-engage with the game. You need it to be coupled with dynamic action and have that happen when they do something correctly, such as placing an item in the right recycling bin or the compost bin. And if they fail at that, you don't want it to be a terrible penalty, because remember, you've got young people playing this, but even adults, they don't like ridicule. So honestly, just like a little brief thing, you don't want to lecture and, somebody coming on a voiceover, that kind of thing, correcting somebody. If you're using a timer to kind of build momentum in the game, allow the player to hit something that's going to allow that timer to continue if they didn't make the goal. Again, that's just a nice way of not making them feel like they're failing while you're still teaching them. So that's really important. Offer rewards. You can do something such as an avatar's adornment or a badge or something like that. And if you let them log in, they can increase those rewards when they come back in. You don't have to do that, but it's something that has been done, and it's been done very well. And then the other thing I would just tell you, don't make the music too childlike. And don't make your rewards too childish either. Just kind of, that's it in a nutshell for me. I'm keeping it short and letting Jeff take over. So Mayor, if you would like to carry on, thank you so much.
So Mayor Burns had to step out for another conflict here. So I'll take the moment to introduce Jeff. We are tight on time, but I did want to, if I can, share the Zoom poll about hauling contracts. Can everyone see that? So there's just some good feedback from hauling contracts, and I'd like to take questions. I know there's lots of good dialogue in the chat, but if I can just keep directing you to the chat for conversation, that would keep us on track. If we have any time at the end, we'll come back to it. So with that, thank you, Marta, for that presentation. Do you want to just talk about what the Rio grant will be doing to build on this knowledge and expertise that you've got on grants and on games and outreach?
Well, we put the game component into our grant. And so right now we envision creating a website with games, but also doing outreach. And we have a person we're in the midst of hiring right now that's going to be involved in that. And they will be hopefully going out to, as I mentioned, some of these places where there's already groups of people that you can engage with. And that's what we're hoping to have you as our municipalities letting us know where you'd like us to come, where you think we'd be valuable, or providing maybe some things for you to utilize. I can tell you from Will County's experience, a lot of the games we've developed over the years are actually very easy to just copy and do. So you don't necessarily have to have us. If you have somebody staffing a booth, we could lend you the materials. At least that's our hope.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add to that, the Rio project is going to fund a full-time recycling education and outreach coordinator that will be available on loan to municipalities throughout the region. This builds on the extraordinary work that the counties and all the partners in the Rio grant, the Solid Waste Agency, SWACO, SWANK, and the counties have been doing on education. So we want to make sure that everyone has access to that. So it's getting built up and staffed up, but we've got a lot to learn from and build off of. So as Mayor Burns said in the beginning, we've got some new tools that are available, and a really exciting new tool is available through Recycle Coach. The Illinois EPA announced a partnership with Recycle Coach, which allows all communities in Illinois to use the Recycle Coach digital tools for free. This is a company that has resources that can help educate residents and improve the recycling rate across the state. Jeff Gallad is here from Recycle Coach. Jeff was appointed the president of Recycle Coach in November of 2023. It's an innovative technology company that solves for waste and recycling challenges at various levels of government. He has over a decade of experience in major market partnerships at various large brands, and he has taken his passion for collaboration to open new relationships with organizations. He is based in Toronto. There's a different vocabulary up there. We'll hear about that. He's very engaged in national conferences and local conferences. And as he said, when we were getting warmed up here, he said probably some of you have heard him speak before. So Recycle Coach is doing a tremendous outreach, but wanted to talk to you here today. So Jeff, we're happy to have you.
And
Thank you. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And Edith, I think you wanted to start off with a poll at the beginning.
Do you want to start off with a poll?
Yeah, we have an opening poll just to warm everybody back up. I will try to keep this brief, about 8 to 10 minutes, so we can ask questions of the other amazing speakers who we're sharing the podium with today. But Jeff here from Recycle Coach. And Chicago and Toronto are best friend cities, very similar architecture and easy flights. So if you're ever in the Toronto area, come see us. But we're spending a lot of time in Illinois. We're hiring in Illinois. But we've got a poll up for you of, who has challenges in their municipality program with waste and recycling rules, no matter how many posters or other types of information you send out. And then the second poll is, my community has started other waste diversion strategies and we're focused on. And we'll kind of come back to those in a few minutes. But We're really excited, and congratulations to this group on a monumental grant from the EPA. Illinois is getting the love from all levels of government to advance recycling, advanced waste diversion in your state. And we're just humbled, excited to be a part of the ride with you, and honored that the Illinois EPA brought us in. We've been in business, we're celebrating 25 years next year. We started as a communications business for waste and recycling for print calendars, built the first mobile app in the space. And we're scaling. With the addition of Illinois, we'll be at about 3,000 municipalities having access to Recycle Coach. Today, we sit at about 1,700. And I'll just share with you a little bit of an update of the progress, because I would hope that many of you as leaders on this call, have heard of us. And the reality is we are live. We're not slowing down. Here is Swalco, Walter and Christina at Swank, a little friendly competition, who would get the web app first. But there's many counties in the process of turning on Recycle Coach. You guys can, Walter, can you do a thumbs up? You can see my screen. Okay, perfect. Thank you. And so how we communicate with your residents is you configure our backend, our client portal, and deploy this right on your website. And then you encourage them to download our friendly mobile app called Recycle Coach. And the reality is, what residents do why residents come to us in the first place is because we want to make their lives easier. And so, yes, we're honored to do an extended partnership with the EPA. And it's been hitting the press, it's been hitting the wavelengths. The leadership in Illinois is being noticed by other states and other entities. I think the number one question I get all the time is, this is a big project. Have you done this before? We've actually been live in New Jersey since 2017, making all a Recycle Coach accessible to all 564 municipalities. About 85% of them have onboarded. And the really interesting stat is that 2.3 million residents in a population of just under 9 million used Recycle Coach in the last 12 months. And so we certainly want to provide clear and accessible waste and recycling information to all municipalities and all residents, and the municipalities driving this, becoming that one source of truth, replacing those PDF posters, not having to rely on designers or outside resources to update that information. And so wanted to just introduce the team a little bit. Nathan is based in Chicago, and he's handling a lot of the onboardings right now, and he's supported by Lauren Webb and Carly. If you're starting to communicate with them, great. I will tell you how to start communicating with them at the end of my presentation. But we are on the lookout for a customer success manager in Illinois as well. We committed to hiring 2 people in the state. So if you know somebody who can come do these types of presentations and work directly with the counties and the agencies and the municipalities, we'd love to meet them. Contract was signed towards the end of May, really started getting some steam around June. And we're really excited to announce that there's about 10 counties in review close to launch, 1 county in prep right now, and Swalco is live. 2 municipalities have launched, and 20 municipalities are in the Prep 2 review, and 44 are completing the onboarding wizard, and 24 are getting ready to complete the onboarding wizard. And we actually estimate that this is roughly about 8 million residents through this collective, these counties and these municipalities, that will have access to Recycle Coach. And I always just say, don't let our name fool you. Recycle Coach is waste agnostic. It's legislatively agnostic. So, great updates from Walter on EPR legislation and planning around that, on different materials. We don't have an opinion. We want to empower your residents to be good stewards of their waste and recycling program, no matter what the configuration is, no matter what the legislation is, no matter who the service provider is. It's really important we remain neutral and you communicate out those rules to your residents. And so that's why I asked about the waste diversion, is that if you're onboarding with us and you are tackling things like curbside organics or bulky waste or electronics, we're ready to support you there as well. Just kind of a quick summary of what the EPA has procured for the state. It's a communication and education package. So communication will ingest all of your collection schedules, anything from waste and trash, So trash and garbage to recycling. If you have yard waste pickup, leaf pickup, we have communities that are putting street sweeping schedules on here or snowplow routes. Anything around in that public works space, we can ingest those collection schedules from your municipality. We then also turn on the What Goes Where tool. This is the most robust What Goes Where database on the market, about 15,000 search terms with 400 waste materials and 12 waste types. So we work in a hierarchy system. And then we layer in the communication, the ability to communicate service delays or inbound, outbound communication with your residents, and let them communicate back with you with our Report a Problem tool. We take all that hyperlocal data and we turn it into learning activities. We ask a weekly we wanted to know question. We look at blog articles around different seasonal topics. So right now about fall cleanup or sustainable gift giving and things like that. And we lead with data. So we do an onboarding survey. We have different quizzes and questions and video series. And we capture all of that data into different engagements and into different impressions and understand what your residents do and don't know. And you can use those data metrics as a opportunity for outreach. And all the promotion for Recycle Coach is self-driven at the municipality. And we support you with a really robust marketing repository, thousands of assets that are available for you in different forms of promoting notifications and communication, of course, how to recycle materials, how to use the What Goes Where tool. And we give you this repository with about 1,000 assets in it, I believe, and they're ready to go on your socials or in your newsletters, but you can also edit them. We give you the Photoshop file and you can put your logo on them or change the copy. The number one most important thing is a good web app placement. And so while we're going through this journey, we've done this again with 1,700 cities across North America, is making sure that the web app, the vehicle for all this information, is in a high impact space. And so we'll help audit your website, suggest where to put it. It's easy, copy, paste JavaScript code, and it shouldn't be a problem. Happy to meet with anybody individually. I just want to be respectful of time. And so I'll leave you with this. Your municipality's ready. Your county representative, you're ready to start working with us. Go ahead. I'll give you a moment right now. Take your phone out of your pocket, take a picture of this or write this email down. This is the team I just showed you, their mugshots, but successgroup@recyclecoach.com. And just send us a quick note, introduce yourself, and say you're ready to start onboarding Recycle Coach in your community. I am seeing the poll results. Thanks for putting those up, Edith. It's exhausting. We hear that a lot, repetitive, repeating ourselves, etc. sometimes. And then our residents are rock stars. We got a couple that feel that way as well. Encouraging to see on the poll around electronics being a big focus, hazardous waste, bulky. So when you're onboarding with us, don't forget to ask us about our strategies and our tools for those waste categories as well. Edith, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mayor's come back.
I was excited to learn about this Recycle tool, and it's just fascinating how you can ingest information, personalize it for communities, and then the resource can be available to municipalities. So congratulations to Walter for getting that live first, and it's in the world of state contracts and such a large scale project. That's really quick. If it just got started in May to have that live already. So good job there, folks. Thank you for catching us up too on timing. We've been wanting to sneak in a video, just a quick recap of what happened when we launched the Rio event last week and in advance of America Recycles Day. So we've got, it's probably just 2-minute video here of some news coverage. So Tori, if you wanted to take that away, and we'll have a minute or two for questions.
Backyards District, one of the largest recycling plants in the Chicago area, as a $2 million federal grant is announced to try to convince more people to recycle more of their garbage.
Well, I think it's important for obvious reasons. Everyone can do something to make the world a little bit more sustainable. Recycling is pretty doggone easy.
It may be easy, but over the last 15 years, recycling rates across the Chicago area have remained flat. Roughly 27% of what we throw out gets recycled, 36% if you include yard waste.
Usually if it's cleanish, I'll reach in the trash cans and pull bottles and cans out and put in their recycling.
So today, the Environmental Protection Agency announced a $2 million recycling education grant awarded to the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, which includes 275 communities across the Chicago area. That money will be used to remind people of what can be recycled and what has to be thrown away. Things like these plastic bags.
Let's just go. See information about recycling.
And while recycling technology is improving, they say many companies are now stamping their products as recyclable when they're really not.
There is a lot of confusion about what can, what can't be. Wish recycling is a real thing. I'm going to toss it in the can and hope to gosh that it does or is recycled. Sometimes that tossing in the can ruins a facility like this because all the machinery comes to a halt.
Right now, the goal is to get recycling rates across the Chicago area up to 50%, which officials here say would divert tens of millions of tons of garbage from local landfills. On the southwest side, Dave Placco, Fox 32 Chicago.
Dad, it's really cold in here.
Thanks, Tori, for showing that. And as you can see, we have experts and all the folks on this call were at that press conference, or the speakers anyway. So we're really lucky to have the expertise for this regional project and the ability to work together. Just a quick recap of where the RIO program is. We also have a contract that started about June. There's cooperative agreements that are in place between all of the counties and the solid waste agencies that are collaborating. They're receiving some direct funds. We have already selected a solid waste consultant to collect data and get baseline measurements for what the recycling is currently like. And then we'll be able to measure progress over the course of the grant for 3 years. We have an RFP open right now looking for a marketing consultant that will help us with outreach across the region over a 3-year period. And we've got a budget and plans for making sure that that message is accessible to all communities across the region, readily understandable, targeting low-income and disadvantaged communities as well throughout the region. As you can see, it's a big region. And then I already mentioned we'll be hiring somebody to assist with hands-on education and outreach. So that's what the RIO grant looks like. And thanks, Cheryl, for putting the RFP link in the chat. And we do have a web page. You can follow activities there. We do have just 4 minutes for questions. So if anybody has a comment or question for any of our speakers that they'd like to go ahead and raise their hand or put a question in the chat, we can call on you. And Walter, from what I've seen, there was an awful lot of interest in EPR. So I'm going to give both you and Marta a chance to tell communities how to be more engaged in either following the legislation. And then I appreciate the invitation for joining Product Stewardship Council, but I'll give you guys a minute to talk a little bit more about how municipalities can support and stay engaged.
Well, I think Marta already kind of recommended that joining the Illinois Product Stewardship Council would be a great way to plug in and start to learn about what EPR is all about and what it can do for municipal government. And then clearly, with the HHW bill, I'll be looking for support, witness slips when the bill gets called in committee. If your municipality has a lobbyist, I'd love to know that. And we need to have a whole cadre of lobbyists down there to try to get this bill passed. But I'll leave it to Marta from there.
Well, just so everybody knows, we have very low introductory for people to get involved. And we've had a couple of municipalities who really understand the mission of EPR legislation and the impact it can have and the relief it can provide to your own public works, your waste hauler, everybody else that is out there finding. Like if you look at the battery bill alone, it hasn't been implemented yet, but we understand that we're getting fires from batteries happening because people are putting things that they shouldn't into their curbside recycling or into their garbage. And we know that we're going to have more collection points throughout the state at retail locations and elsewhere to take back the alkaline batteries that people are always confused about that aren't really hazardous, as well as the rechargeable batteries. So there's so many materials. Number one material that we get called on at the county is paint, and we have the paint legislation that's rolling out. So these are nuisance customer service issues for all of us, and they take up a lot of our time to repetitively answer. So EPR provides so many different answers and solutions for us, and having your support on that legislation, as Walter mentioned, even if you don't attend our meetings, which are about 8 times a year, monthly meetings, you're at least getting the emails, and you know to let your folks know that they need to support the household hazardous waste legislation or any other items that we're going after. And as Walter mentioned, if that part isn't going to be costly, because you're simply showing that support through your lobbyist, which really does speak volumes in Springfield.
And I don't want to get too heavy on the lobbyist, but obviously a lot of you know your legislators, so direct contact, email, phone call, seeing them in person. The more they hear about EPR and the legislation we're trying to pass, the better. So that person-to-person contact is important too, if you know your legislators.
Thank you. Hopefully our communities will be supportive as that comes forward. Jeff, there's a couple of questions for you in the chat when you have a direct invitation, but question from Bob Wagner in Villa Park. Could you talk a little bit more about the outreach? He's specifically asking if there's a cost to join Recycle Coach, but talk about how you're getting the information out and the onboarding that you're already doing and how you're working with municipalities.
Yeah, for sure. So we've been very lucky in many of the counties that are on this call right now. They've taken a countywide leadership approach to configure the majority of the materials just for accuracy and really kind of adding the Illinois information that we wouldn't have contextually. So we really appreciate the agencies and the counties doing a lot of the heavy lifting. From a municipality perspective, it's probably, if you know your waste programs, collection times, and holidays you observe, we can probably get you into the system and starting the onboarding process over a bit of time, so a couple hours. Then we take that information, it's through our onboarding wizard technology, we take it back and start to configure your city. We're basically anybody who's in the queue now, we are able to launch them before the new year, but anybody joining the queue will probably launch them in January. There's absolutely no cost. Any promotion you want to do is on your own, but we do provide a ton of marketing resources to help with socials and press releases and communicate this out to your residents. But you don't have to sign a contract with us. You don't have to involve procurement or anything like that. The EPA made it incredibly easy for you just to sign up and get started. And I saw some head shaking, and that sentiment I hope is shared, but it is definitely as easy as just reaching out to that success group, and we just start sending you a bit of homework, you send us a bit of homework, and then we get together and train you how to use our system.
And I do know that DuPage County is working on it very hard. So Villa Park, you should be able to plug into that, what the county's doing as well.
Just typing that same answer. So there you go. Thank you for that. I thought it was a really good meeting. And the topic is never boring. I have to say, when we did the kickoff event for the Rio, I learned 2 items that could go in the recycling bin, 3. So it's always changing. I appreciate the opportunity to share information. I appreciate how dynamic these tools are and the foundational work that was done to get us this far as a region. Even to be able to compete for the grant and come from a baseline of, or a base of knowledge and expertise. So with that, I will close out the meeting on behalf of Mayor Kevin Burns. Just a reminder, the next Environment Committee meeting, we do meet every month on the 3rd Tuesdays, so you can usually plan on that. Cheryl does an excellent job of communicating information and registration. We do ask for Zoom registration. She already put that link in the chat. Topic will be solar incentives and solar program updates, and just a teaser. ComEd is thinking about a new low-income rooftop solar program and wants to get your feedback on it. So we look forward to a dialogue on December 17th, 9:30 to 11. Same place. We'll see you on Zoom. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to all of our speakers. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Likewise, you too.